Okay, so this is just a quick summary to let you know what we're going to be covering in the exam and what the exam structure for the many of you didn't turn up for week 12 where all the guidance was given. So exam date is 25th, Friday the 25th in the morning in City Space. It's a 3-hour exam and it's got 3 elements of it. The first one is compulsory 10 short answer questions, 5% each. Second bit is a long essay question, 25%, and the final bit is a case study. Good revision for the case studies I'll mention in a few minutes, but it's to go through the case studies we covered in the practicals of week 5 and 6, and to look back at what work you did for your group report, because it's a very similar process you go through for the case studies. Going through the short answer questions first. These are, you get 5 marks for each of these, and for a lot of them you'll be asked to produce 5 elements, or you'll get a calculation question. So what I'm going to go through first is very quickly how do I do the calculations in terms of if I'm given what percentage energy someone is consuming from carbs, fats and proteins, what's that as a percent, what's that in grams per kilo, or the other way around, when I'm told their intake in grams, what is that as a percentage of their total intake. So if it's 2,000 calories, 100 grams of protein, what percentage of their diet is protein? So I'm going to go through this question here and try and answer that there. Okay, so one thing we need to know is how many calories is there in a gram of carbs, is there in a gram of protein, in a gram of fat. So for carbs, it's about 3.75 grams, 3.75 calories per gram. If it's protein, it's equal to 4 kilocalories per gram. If it's fat, it's 9 kilocalories per gram. You can use kilocalories or kilojoules in your answers. To get to small amount, if you use 4 calories per gram for carbs, where it's actually 3.75 is the actual amount. So if we look at the carbohydrate question here, we've got 70% carbs, so we've got 14 megajoules, 70% carbs, 20% fat, and 10% protein. I'll do a slightly easier calculation. I'll do the fat one because that will be a little bit simpler. What percentage of fat is that in their diet? How many grams of fat is that? So we're told they have 1400 megajoules and 14 megajoules, and 20% of that is fat. How many grams of fat is that? Okay, so first thing we need to do is change the megajoules into calories. We're used to using that. But even before that, we need to turn megajoules into kilojoules, and it's like megabytes and kilobytes. It's 14,000 kilojoules is that amount there. So we're trying to work out how many calories is that. We'll need to divide that by 4.187, and that value you'll be given in the exam. So 1 calorie is 4.187 kilojoules. I'll have to try and make that calculation now here. So I'll just try and do it with my phone. Obviously you're not allowed in the exam to have a phone with you. So it's 14,000 divided by 4.187, which you'll be told in the exam. And we get from that 3,344 calories. So that's how much that is in calories. 20% of that is fat, So we need to get 20% of that. If we do that calculation, 20%, 20%, multiply that by 20 divided by 100. And we get 600 and, so 20% of that we get 667 kilocalories is equal to fat. The next step should be relatively simple. Each gram is worth 9 calories. So I simply divide that by 9, and that tells me how much fat there is. So 9 into 66 goes 7 times, leaves you 3 over, goes 4 times, leaves you 1 over. And your answer is 74 grams of fat for that question. So there's different ways of doing it. If it was carbs, I'd divide it by 3.75. If it was protein, I'd divide it by 4. Make sure you're able to do it this way, and more commonly in the case studies that you're able to do it the opposite way. So if you're told how many grams of carbs, fats and protein someone's intaken, can you calculate what percentage of their diet is fats, carbs or proteins? And that's particularly important for fat, since the broad recommendations for fat are less than 30%. Total energy should be from fat for an athlete, and less than 10% saturated fat for an athlete or for any individual. So that's the calculations. Make sure you can do them both ways. Turn it from percentages into grams, and make sure you can turn it from grams into percentages.